Under the pale moonlight, the small town of Serre lay in silence. Only the howling wind broke the stillness, like whispers from death itself. Lucy Morgan, a free-spirited artist seeking inspiration, arrived in this forgotten place. She had wandered through countless cities, but Serre felt different, as if the darkness here was alive, clinging to every breath. She rented a rundown room, the air heavy with the scent of rotting wood and damp. Just 1 week, she told herself. She planned to leave for Kingston the next morning. But that night, the darkness laid its trap. In her dream, Lucy was walking up an old wooden staircase. Each step creaked like snapping bones. The air was thick, suffocating. Only a faint light slipped through a small crack in a wooden door ahead. Her heart pounded, yet her legs moved on their own, dragging her toward the door. She pushed it open. A wave of icy air sliced through her skin. Inside, a strange room. The carpet was torn into jagged squares, as if someone had clawed at it with their bare hands. The windows were nailed shut with rusted spikes, their tips jutting out like demon fangs. Only faint slivers of light broke through, and the wind howled through them like cries from the dead. For some reason, Lucy felt drawn to the bed in the center of the room. The mattress, tattered, frigid, felt like a tombstone. She lay down, eyes shut tight, trying to ignore the creeping dread. Then, a breath, heavy, raspy, right beside her ear. She opened her eyes, and the blood in her veins turned to ice. A woman stood at the foot of the bed, skin pale as a corpse, bloated body, a grotesquely swollen belly. Her eyes were slits of black, bottomless voids. Strands of long, stringy hair clung to her face like cobwebs. She didn't move. She only stared, lips trembling in silence. Lucy tried to scream, tried to move, but her body was bound by some invisible force. The woman slowly leaned forward, so close Lucy could feel her icy breath on her skin. Then, in a voice raspy like death, she whispered, "This is the land of the wicked. Run, while you still can." Her bony, frozen hand touched Lucy's shoulder, and in an instant Lucy was thrown back, out the door, out of the dream. She awoke in a cold sweat. Her heart thundered in her chest. The clock struck midnight. She curled into herself, eyes locked on the door, dreading it might open at any moment. At sunrise, Lucy packed her things in a frenzy. She told the innkeeper her plans had changed. She wouldn't go to Kingston. The innkeeper gave her a strange smile and suggested another town, Dorset. Lucy nodded, thinking only one thing: anywhere but Kingston. In Dorset, she asked locals about cheap lodging. A man directed her to a small house atop a hill, charming yet strangely ominous. An old woman greeted her. Kind face, warm smile. She led Lucy upstairs to view the room. The staircase was pitch dark. Each of Lucy's steps echoed like the beat of a funeral drum. At the top, a wooden door. One. Exactly like the one in her dream. Her heart clenched. She reassured herself. Just a coincidence. All old houses looked the same. The woman opened the door. Lucy stepped inside and gasped. The room, a perfect replica of her nightmare. The same torn carpet squares, the same nailed windows, the same heavy, suffocating air. Every detail matched, as if she had walked straight into the dream itself. The old woman still smiled. "Would you like to stay?" she asked sweetly. Her voice was soft, too soft, as if the smile masked something terrible. Lucy hesitated, her throat dry. The woman excused herself to make tea, leaving Lucy alone. Moments passed, then, knocking, slow, steady. Lucy, trembling, opened the door. Not the old woman, not tea. It was her, the pale lady, white skin, black slit eyes, hair slicked down in matted strands. Her swollen body sagged like it had just risen from the bottom of a lake. She didn't speak. She only stared. Her gaze pierced Lucy's soul. A raspy hiss escaped her lips, like wind through a graveyard. Lucy ran, down the stairs, out of the house, never looking back. Her footsteps faded into the wind, but she swore. Behind her, that same whisper followed. Run. The story ends, but the fear does not. Who is the pale lady? A spirit of warning? Or a demon luring its next victim? Was the innkeeper in on it? Or just another piece of the nightmare? The answers lie in the dark, where the pale lady still waits, ready to whisper once more. This is the land of the wicked. The inspiration behind the pale lady. Under the gray sky of a remote countryside, where fog clings tightly to the forest trees, the story of Elizabeth begins. A haunting tale, the seed that grew into the legend of the Pale Lady. Elizabeth was young and beautiful, radiant like sunlight. She married Major Ankh, a wealthy man 15 years her senior. He seemed the perfect image of success, powerful, generous, providing everything Elizabeth desired. But behind that flawless exterior, a shadow lurked, silent, invisible, waiting for a chance to consume her soul. They moved to a vast, isolated hunting estate, where the wind howled through the trees like the wails of imprisoned spirits. Elizabeth's duties were simple: prepare rooms for visiting hunters. At first, she remained cheerful, her smile as bright as ever, pushing back the darkness. But after just a few months, she changed. Her skin turned pale as a corpse, her eyes sunken, her gaze lost, as if trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Her belly began to swell unnaturally, though she wasn't pregnant. A neighbor, an old woman with sharp eyes, noticed something was wrong. Elizabeth no longer spoke much. She moved like a ghost, drifting through the cold, empty halls of the estate. One day the old woman pressed her for answers. What Elizabeth revealed froze her blood. Elizabeth said that since arriving at the estate, a man's face had begun haunting her. His face was gaunt, his eyes pure white, like a thing sculpted from death itself. He appeared everywhere, in the forest shadows, reflected in the faces of the hunting guests, and, most terrifyingly, in her dreams. Every night he stood there in the corner of her room, staring. His lips moved but no words came out. "He wants to hurt me," Elizabeth whispered, her voice trembling as though even speaking of him might summon him. Doctors were called. They shook their heads and labeled her delusional. They blamed it on the isolation, on the stress of adjusting to life after a carefree youth. But Elizabeth knew better. It was real. And every day he drew closer. Fearing for her sanity, the major closed the estate and took her traveling across the world. For a while it worked. In glittering cities, Elizabeth's smile returned. Her eyes regained their light. But the peace didn't last. When they arrived in Rome, the darkness came back, stronger than ever. One night, in their cold, stone-walled hotel room, Elizabeth screamed and collapsed. She'd seen him, in the room standing in the shadows, his white eyes glowing like blades. The doctors repeated their diagnosis: stress fatigue. But Elizabeth no longer trusted anyone. She could feel him, not just in her dreams but when she was wide awake. He was everywhere, in the wind, in the dark, in the eyes of strangers. Each time she thought she'd escaped, he returned, dragging her back toward the abyss. In the spring of 1848, the major had to leave Rome for business. Elizabeth begged him not to go. She fell to her knees, tears streaming, her voice hoarse with fear. But he left. 2 weeks later, when he returned, Elizabeth was gone. No note, no goodbye. All her belongings, clothes, jewelry, had vanished as if they'd never existed. She hadn't checked out of the hotel. She simply disappeared. Only one clue remained. A nun from a nearby cathedral swore she'd seen Elizabeth, riding in a carriage beside a man. His face was gaunt, his eyes pure white. The exact man Elizabeth had described again and again. The carriage vanished into the mist, and Elizabeth was never seen again. Her story, though not directly connected, became the spark for the creation of the Pale Lady. A creepypasta writer took that primal fear, of a relentless, unexplainable presence hiding in the dark, and gave it form. Was Elizabeth the victim of a supernatural force? Or had her mind shattered under the weight of hidden truths from that cursed estate? And who was the mysterious man? A ghost? Or a predator disguised as a man? The answers disappeared with Elizabeth. All that remains are whispers in the dark, where the Pale Lady still waits, ready to breathe her warnings to the next lost soul. This is the land of the damned. Creepy tales of the lost coin in the subway. The lost coin. In a small house, surrounded by the stillness of night, a flickering light barely illuminated the dim corners. A family gathered around the dinner table, laughter mixed with the clinking of dishes. But the warmth couldn't chase away the chill creeping through the cracks. That night, an old friend came to visit, bringing light-hearted stories. But when the clock struck midnight, every sound stopped. The front door swung open, without a sound, as if pushed by an invisible hand. A child stepped inside, its skin pale like mist, wearing a thin, torn white outfit. Its eyes were hollow. It didn't speak. It didn't look at anyone. It simply walked, straight into the room next door. The visiting friend's heart pounded. His breath became heavy. Moments later, the child walked back out, just as silent, then vanished through the door. The next night, and the night after, the same thing happened. At exactly midnight, the child appeared, entered the room, and disappeared. Fear and curiosity boiled within the guest. Unable to stay silent, he finally asked the father, "Who is the child that shows up at midnight?" The father stared, confused. "What child? I haven't seen anyone." That night, when the pale figure appeared again, the guest pointed. But the family, the father, the mother, the children, all shook their heads. They saw nothing. No one. Doubting his own mind, but unable to ignore it, the guest made a decision. The next night, as the child entered the room, he followed quietly. In the darkness, he saw the small figure kneeling on the floor. Its little hands were scratching at the wooden boards, as if searching for something more precious than life itself. Suddenly, it looked up, its eyes, white and lifeless, locked onto his. A faint hiss filled the room, like wind across a graveyard, and then it vanished. Shaking, he told the family everything. The mother went pale. She recognized the child, her own child, who had died less than a month before. They pulled up the wooden floorboards, and beneath the rotting wood were 2 old coins glinting faintly in the dim light. The mother broke down in tears. She remembered she had given her child the coins to deliver to a poor man at the end of the street. But in childish innocence, the child had hidden them, wanting to buy cookies instead. The spirit, bound by an unfinished promise, could not rest. The family took the coins to the poor man, fulfilling the child's final wish. From that night on, the pale figure never appeared again. But every night, as the clock strikes 12, the guest still feels a cold breeze pass through the house, as if the child is still watching from the other side. The subway. Beneath the city, in the dark tunnels of the subway, where the screech of metal meets the rhythm of the human heart, a terrifying encounter unfolded. Near midnight, a young woman, let's call her Anna, stepped into an almost empty train car. Only 3 people were seated at the far end. A woman sitting between 2 large men. For some reason she couldn't explain, Anna chose to sit directly across from them. The woman's eyes were cold, unblinking, and fixed on her. The 2 men beside her were silent, but their presence felt dangerous, like something just beneath the surface. Anna tried to calm herself. She opened a book, pretending to read. But every time she looked up, those eyes were still staring, as if they wanted to devour her. The train stopped at the next station. A man stepped in. He scanned the car, his gaze pausing on the 3 at the end, then locking onto Anna. He walked toward her, sat down beside her, said nothing. As the train started moving again, he leaned closer and whispered, his voice deep and rough, "If you want to live, get off at the next stop." Anna's heart clenched. She dared not ask. She simply nodded. The darkness of the train car felt like it was closing in. At the next station, they both stepped off, blending into the small crowd. Anna exhaled, relieved, but the man was still tense. Sweat dotted his forehead, as if he'd just escaped death. He turned to her, his voice shaking. "I'm a doctor. The woman sitting across from you, she was dead." The 2 men beside her, they were just holding up her body. Anna felt the blood freeze in her veins. She remembered the lifeless eyes, the pale, unmoving face, the way the woman's body didn't shift, didn't breathe. They called the police, but the case faded into silence. No answers, no closure. Anna never rode the subway at night again, but the memory of those dead, staring eyes still follows her. A warning from beyond. In the darkness, it's not ghosts or monsters you should fear most. It's people.